about to lose. You fascist about to lose. You fascist about to lose. You're about to lose. You fascist about to lose. People of every color marching side by side, marching across the fields where a million fascists died. You're about to lose. You fascists about to lose. All of you fascists about to lose. You fascists about to lose. You fascists about to lose. You're about to lose. You fascists about to lose. I'm going to this battle, take my union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery, for this war is one you're bound to lose. You fascists are bound to lose. Are you fascists about to lose? You fascists about to lose. You fascists about to lose. You're about to lose. You fascists about to lose. I say, are you fascists about to lose?
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
It is Friday, February 8th, 2013. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live in the literal, though not metaphorical, shadow of the New York Times building in the fashionable Dollar Lunch District of New York City. It's Casual Friday, folks. Cliff Schecter has the day off. In his stead, Chris Hayes from Up with Chris on MSNBC and contributing editor to The Nation magazine. Also on the program today, the legendary Frank Conniff to give us some movie recommendations for the weekend, which I imagine we will be able to watch, as could be one of those shut-in weekends here in the Northeast. Also on the program today, John Brennan testifies in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee for 3 hours. We got a good torture joke out of it, I guess. Not really. We got a good attempt at not even a good attempt at a torture joke. His refusal to say that torture is illegal, and indication that there are more Office of Legal Counsel memos that the administration has not handed over in terms of justifying the targeted killing program that John Brennan has overseen. Bush family emails hacked. Not terribly interesting. In North Dakota, new personhood amendment on the verge of passing. We will get to that story of the two daughters who left the Westboro Baptist Church. A little more on the Republican war, interscene war. Intramural? I'm not sure. Some words on Social Security. And more on the attack on the post office and who is rallying to their defense. Folks, if you want to support this program, and every day it becomes more and more important that we have your support, you can do so by becoming a member today at majority.fm/ become a member. It's just that time of, I guess, the year. People are cutting back, and so if you can afford to become a member, please do. Other ways of supporting the program are, of course, we got our Amazon link at majority.fm. Click on Support the Show. We also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Get 10% off using the coupon code MAJORITY, and give us a good review on iTunes. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, and sadly, we don't have a theme song for Chris Hayes. But when we come back, we'll be talking to Chris Hayes.
Your mind.
We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report on the phone. Always a pleasure to welcome to this program Chris Hayes, the host of Up with Chris on MSNBC and a contributing writer to The Nation magazine. Chris, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be back, Sam.
Now, let's get right down to it. What do you think about this storm, dude?
Let's get right down to it. Let's not waste any time. I am now looking at staying at a Midtown hotel so that I could not miss my show tomorrow morning. I was going to go back home to Park Slope, but now that there's going to be a foot of snow, I don't really want to risk it.
Yeah, they may shut down the subways.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it probably prudence dictates that I should do it. Although I'm sort of loath to miss a bedtime with my daughter.
I understand. At that age too, your daughter's what now? Like only
she's 14 months now.
This is when they really start to grow.
She's super into being read books, and definitely a highlight of the day is sitting there with her on my lap, going through some books. Don't let the pigeon drive the bus, etc.
Been
shout
there.
out to all the parents of young kids out there who know that reference. So yeah, I'm sort of loath to miss that, but yeah, we got to make sure that we can get the show up and running tomorrow morning.
Well, I think you tweeted something about the post office. They may not be coming on Saturdays.
They may have suspended Saturday service, but we have not.
Actually, I want to touch on that, but before we do, let's talk about what I perceive to be sort of the big news this week is was the Brennan hearings and the sort of the release of. Well, at first, I guess NBC got hold of a white paper which purported to summarize at least one Office of Legal Counsel memo which outlined the legal justification for the targeted killing program. I think one of the things that we learned, at least by reading between the lines during the hearings yesterday, was that there were more memos and.
Yep.
Senator Ron Wyden is at least implying that he may stop this nomination if they don't get those memos. Give me your sense first of the hearings.
I thought the hearings were they weren't the kind of total embarrassing debacle that the Chuck Hagel hearings were. So I suppose grading on a curve, they were not. They weren't terrible. I thought they were largely pretty. They were sort of surprisingly substanceless in some ways. There was, trying to, Saxy Chambliss trying to score some partisan points by referring to some 1998 decision. Brennan had made in the CIA where he had vetoed a strike at Bin Laden because he didn't think their intelligence was sufficient, as if that were some, massively and Brennan stuck by his guns. So there was that kind of point scoring. There was a fair amount of institutional jockeying, which is healthy, but also, I'm not quite sure how much it's grandstanding and how much of it's real. What I mean by institutional jockeying is, the House Intelligence Oversight Committee sort of asserting their oversight priority and prerogative and asking John Brennan to be forthcoming and transparent. Right. And the whole thing seems a little theatrical to say, if you're confirmed, will you be transparent and honest with us? And he says, of course I'll be transparent and honest with you. And then they turn around and complain about the CIA is never transparent and honest with us, right? So I found that whole thing it all seemed a little like everyone's going through the motions. What we have not seen, outside of a few select people, and Ron Wyden, I would say, would be absolutely the point person on this. Mm-hmm. Outside of Ron Wyden, there really has not been a serious effort on the part of Congress to reassert its authority, its oversight authority and control in this kind of prolonged war on terror era. There have been specific instances in which it has done it, but it has undertaken nothing comprehensive on the order of, say, the 1970s Church Committee, which was really the last time that Congress kind of asserted and reasserted its authority and oversight role. And so I didn't see much, aside from Ron Wyden, change yesterday. And the thing I think to remember is that, even if there are different centers of gravity and there's some resistance to being cut out of the loop on the part of members of the Senate, they are basically on the same page as to the policy. I mean, there's tremendous policy consensus around targeted killing as an instrument of American foreign policy and counterterrorism, and so you didn't see a lot of debate over that,
which is sort of stunning when you consider the fact that they had only really gotten the first first-hand peek at what the justification for this policy is. I mean, in terms of law, the night before, right, and presumably didn't really have time to really go through this. And, one of the things that concerns me about this nomination, because it would appear, short of Ron Wyden saying, leveraging this nomination to get more of those documents, that this is going to be the way that Congress implicitly, if not explicitly, says, okay, we're fine with this program.
Right.
I mean, once they confirm the architect, and, to the extent that I've had conversations on this program about the memo or the shadow of the memo, I guess, because we don't see the OLC memo. The idea here is that, I mean, not only is this sort of them implicitly buying into this, but to the extent that we know what's in there, it appears that this was written to justify the actions that were already taken. In other words, this was written in retrospect. It was reverse engineered, the policy, to fit around this. And from what we know from what was released by this leak earlier in the week, we don't even know what. We just know that this case of, let's say, targeting American citizens is sufficient to cross the threshold. We don't even know what the threshold, just how low that threshold is for it to be legal.
Right. I mean, the document that we got our hands on is not the document. I mean, you basically said this, but just people should be clear. It is not the official opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel, right? The Office of Legal Counsel, which is a relatively heretofore obscure, well, prior to the Bush years, I would say, an obscure office in the Department of Justice, which essentially kind of acts like the executive branch's Supreme Court internally, right? When the executive branch wants to know, is something legal? Can we do this? The OLC essentially issues the final opinion on that. And we got to know the OLC during the Bush years because of the infamous Bybee memo, which was authored by John Yoo, which had which was subsequently revoked because it said that torture was allowable and legal, and even created a threshold for torture that basically anything up to something that would cause the amount of pain associated with organ failure. Right? So now, OLC, there are OLC memos we think there's about 7 of them that are different iterations of the constitutional reasoning and legal reasoning as to why the government can engage in the kind of targeted killing it's doing broadly, and then targeted killing specifically with American citizens at stake. This was a memo written based on some of the legal reasoning that appears in those actual official decisions memos that are classified and have now been released, or some of which have now been released, one of which at least has been released to the Senate Intelligence Committee. So the reasoning there is sort of ex post. Presumably, one would hope that before they actually killed al-Awlaki, they, even in the targeting phase, and there was a question about whether they could even target him, that prior to adding him to the list, they went through OLC and got their blessing. We don't know that for sure. It would be fairly scandalous if they ex post went to OLC to have them reverse engineer a decision, a justification for it.
I mean, I had a conversation with Scott Horton from Harper's, who his sense was that this was reverse engineered, that this is a now, of course, we don't know. We don't know what the dates are.
Wait, you're talking about the document we've seen?
I'm talking about the OLC memos that this was based on.
Memo.
I mean, and
Right.
that the program was set up. And then at one point it was like, okay, now how do we justify this?
Right.
Which is very problematic. That's also what we know of the Bybee memos too, is that these were much of the legal reasoning was constructed after the fact to essentially justify a program that had already taken place or had already been initiated anyways. And the thing that's problematic with this is that, now we don't know what's in those other 6, 7, 8 OLC memos as to whether or not they address such questions as, hey, can you kill an American citizen on American soil? There's so much. And again, this is hard because all we saw was essentially a shadow of what the OLC memos purport to say. But there's such looseness, when things like imminent threat is determined less by an actual threat, but more personified in someone who could be problematic in the future. When things like the ability to capture that subject of a targeted assassination is deemed impossible, but also includes the potential for U.S. personnel to pose undue risk to the U.S. personnel. That's like 2 layers of complete subjective analysis, right? The risk, and then what constitutes undue risk.
Right.
I mean, if you say there's a 35% risk that someone is going to one of our team is going to get killed in this mission, that's a subjective analysis. And then whether or not that's undue is also subjective.
Right. Right, and I mean, you can imagine that same logic applying to specific situations domestically, right? I mean,
of course.
Look at the Branch Davidians, right?
Or look at what's happening in California. I mean, police officers go out every day and they get shot. So it seems very problematic, and it seems even more problematic that by confirming this guy, the Congress will have sort of de facto signed off on the policy.
I mean, the fact of the matter is they've de facto signed off on it anyway, right? I mean, part of me, it's a little, even, Louis Gohmert, Texas Republican, was railing against this on the floor, and other conservatives, prominent conservatives in the media have made us think about it. Rupert Murdoch tweeted about it.
To be fair, though, he did refer to Guantanamo Bay as Guatemala.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, he is, he's either a victim of autocorrect or, like many leftists in America, still upset about the role that the U.S. government played in the horrific coup in Guatemala in the 1950s. One of the two.
Right.
But I'm looking right now on my computer on an April 6, 2010 New York Times front page above the fold article, U.S. approves targeted killing of American cleric by Scott Shane, in which it was reported that we had added al-Awlaki to the kill list.
Right.
Subsequently, he was killed. Everyone knew that we did it, even if Jake Carney, when asked about it by members of the White House press corps, and I would say Jake Tapper has been good on this and particularly persistent on this, basically said, I can't talk about that. We can't talk about anything with the program. So, all of the kind of outrage or debate that this memo has precipitated, to me, seems a little late. I mean, we've known basically this was the contours. Now, we do now have the explicit legal rationale, and I think a lot of the things about the legal rationale as reflected, again, as you say, the sort of shadow that is this memo, does not make you feel better about the program insofar as, for instance, the definition of imminence is so widely construed as essentially to be rendered meaningless. So there are new facts, but, we have all known, I mean, anyone reading the newspaper has known the basic contours of the program and how it operates. There, aside with the exception of Ron Wyden and a few other folks,
right,
there just hasn't been much outcry. I mean, I think Congress, and there hasn't been much public outcry either. I mean, what there is right now is essentially a kind of complicity around, both the national security establishment more or less is on board with this. The administration, obviously, who are the architects, are on board. Both congressional Democrats and congressional Republicans, by and large, are essentially on board, and the American public. Now, all of that does not add up to it being the right thing to do from a policy perspective, from a legal perspective, or from a moral perspective. But there, it's nothing new for this hearing to essentially act as a kind of, tacit assent for it. I think you're right, however, that the act of confirming Brennan does something more concrete and does act as some kind of going on the record that you're fine with it.
Right. That's that seems to be in the context of the so-called war on terror and the perception, at least, that this is an assault on civil liberties, which I happen to share. It seems to be, if that is the narrative of the Obama administration, is the codification of these things in a way that the Bush administration didn't, and in some respects is more dangerous if that's if people share that concern. I mean, what do you make of the fact that there is? I mean, people have said this is nothing new, but had the Bush administration been engaged in this, it would have there would be a lot greater public outcry, and certainly on the left, right? I mean,
no. I mean, there's no question about that, right? I mean, I think it's unquestionably the case, and I think a lot of conservatives have sort of delighted in pointing out that hypocrisy. That was basically the point of Murdoch's tweet, once you substitute Guantanamo for Guatemala. And they're not wrong. I mean, it's true. It's absolutely true. And I think there's a combination of two things at play. One is just straight up hypocrisy. I mean, just, essentially partisanship in its purest, rawest form. And I don't think that's really defensible, right? I mean, Principles are principles, and you should apply those principles even when people that you voted for are in power. There is also a layer of this which is about trust, which I think is a little different than the straight up partisanship, which has to do with the fact that I don't think it's irrational that citizens have differential levels of trust towards different politicians and political parties, right? Like, for people to think, I trust Barack Obama to judiciously exercise his power, but I wouldn't trust, someone else. I don't buy that argument, because I think the office ends up
of course, right? I mean, that's
how power is. Right, but it's not. I guess my point is that it's not. I think there's a response from people who care about this, and I include myself among them very much, and I think you are, of this is just hypocrisy and rank sort of partisan blindness. And there's part of that, but part of that is people just do trust different people in different ways, right? And I mean, look, if Paul Krugman were Treasury Secretary, I think I would give him more latitude if he made arguments about certain things than I would if Jamie Dimon were, right?
Right, of course.
Even if they were articulating the same policy, because I trust those two guys in very different ways, right? And so that's part of it also. There's a kind of sinister kind of craven aspect to it, and then there's an aspect that I think is much less sinister and much less craven and much more normal and human, although I think something still to be wary of and vigilant against, which is the fact that we have different levels of trust for different kinds of political actors.
Right.
And,
the fundamental difference between your example and this one, and this one in terms of these civil liberties, is we're talking actually about the law. Policies come and go with administrations. This goes beyond a policy because what it is it's setting down markers as to what constitutes law, which will, at the very least, depending on, this may not apply for Glenn Beck and Alex Jones, but presumably Barack Obama will not be president in 3.5 years. Somebody else will. And so you've already set the marker as to what whoever comes after is legally justified in doing.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. That's precisely what's problematic about it. And I also think, for people that do find themselves inclined to, trust, the president with this power, but they wouldn't trust Mitt Romney. And, the history of this is pretty clear that executive broad assertions of executive authority lead to bad things in anybody's hands, and even people that I think are universally admired among Democrats to the left, Franklin Roosevelt did horrible things with overly broad assertions of executive authority, like interning Japanese people. So the history here is pretty clear, and I think the point you made, which I think, to me, the big issue that we're not talking about, that is, to me, the defining problem, is what is the war on terror and when and how can it end? Under what conditions will it end? Because one of the things that is invoked in the memo and was invoked throughout the Bush administration by both defenders within and without the administration, is invoked now within the Obama administration by defenders within and without, is, look, this is a war. It's a different kind of war than past wars. You have to create a new legal architecture to deal with that, right? People go through the reasoning. Americans who signed up with the Nazis, we could kill them on a battlefield. No, that was not even constitutionally controversial, and I think people, don't think that necessarily would be, right? If some American defected to the Germans and was, at Hitler's shoulder in the bunker and was, firing as the Americans advanced or the Russians advanced, we think, sure, right, that person's a combatant. They're subject to the laws of war, and it's legitimate for us to kill them. We wouldn't have to go in and indict him or try to capture him, right?
Right.
And so the war metaphor is doing a tremendous amount of the legal and logical work of justifying whatever is at play, whether it was the suspension of habeas corpus or the denial of habeas corpus in the early line of cases having to do with Guantanamo, whether it's the denial of due process rights in court and as articulated in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, in this case, in al-Awlaki's case. And to me, the question is, okay, if it's a war, if it continues to be a war, name some condition under which it would be possible for this war to end.
Well, that's what's so nefarious about the war on terrorism, is that what you're doing is you're all you need to do at that point is redefine the term war, and then all of a sudden all of these analogies work for you. That's what's problematic, is that we have redefined the term war to be almost without definition.
Right, that's right, and also to create, essentially a permanent state of war, and I don't, the problem is if what defines being at war is the existence of organized groups that wish to pull off attacks on the United States or its or United States targets, embassies, etc. I just don't see that condition ever not being met in the next 100 years.
Well, or ever. Has it ever been met?
It's just
it's never. That's the point. Is that the word war really doesn't mean anything anymore, because a war had some boundaries and definition, and once you sort of expand it beyond those boundaries and definition, the word is really sort of meaningless. It's just a perpetual state.
And one of the things I think, one of the questions I think to ask is, okay, if we don't, for those of us who don't like this, right, is like, what is, I think we need to talk about, declaring an end to the war, and that would mean, I think particularly at the same time that we're withdrawing from Afghanistan, right, would be a really politically wise and moment to essentially declare an end to war and get rid of the authorization use of military force past 2 weeks after 9/11, which is essentially the statutory foundation of a lot of the war state as we currently are, right?
Everything.
And also, and to articulate a vision of peacetime counterterrorism, right? Like we should not have to be permanently at war to protect the American populace from essentially, from mass murder carried out against civilians. We should be able to be a country at peace that also vigilantly pursues, intelligence about people that are plotting to do terrible things and prevents those plots. Those two things can coexist, right? Right now, we do not talk about it as if they can. And that, to me, is the place that we need to get to.
The tragedy is, I think, to a certain extent, that's what John Kerry ran on in many respects. It was, at least at one point, was to convert this supposed war on terror into a sort of a police action where you would no longer be operating under the rubric of the authorization for military force. And it's that, I mean, that is, the words perpetual war really is oxymoronic in a way, in the sense that, then war really has no meaning. It's just simply a license to do essentially anything you want. But, it's like a perpetual state of emergency. That doesn't, you can't really have one of those.
And it's funny, like, I'll start this by saying, I'm not by no means am I equating the U.S. post 9/11 to the Egypt under Hosni Mubarak. But we look at Mubarak and we look at Egypt as the 25 years of the emergency laws, and we sort of like chuckle as like that's like just the classic dictator gambit, right? Like we it's always an emergency. The emergency laws are always. But like, look, they did have the leader of their country assassinated by a terrorist, right? Like there were it wasn't irrational that afterwards they were like, we gotta get our stuff together and maybe change some things about the way our laws work to make sure that we don't have the Muslim Brotherhood killing our leaders. But of course, then that state just hung around, and it proved incredibly toxic to any kind of democratic aspirations. And the U.S. is an incredibly different place for a million different reasons, but the idea of a permanent state of emergency should strike as an anathema, and yet we've all been, I think, pretty subtly lulled into just thinking about it as such. Because one of the things I see in discussion of targeted killing is people say, well, this is better than invading, right? We don't want to invade Yemen, and that was basically the perspective of the neocons and George W. Bush in the last administration, and that was such a disaster, and look, we ended up in Iraq. And so what do you want? That's as if those are the two alternatives, both of which, essentially assume that there has to be some kind of war action. Right. And the question is, how big will the war be? How targeted or narrow will the war be? There's going to be a war. We're going to take, we are going to go out and kill people all over the globe. Should we kill them with machines from above in a targeted way? Should we kill them indiscriminately with armies and subject our, fellow citizens to death and injury and destruction through ground invasions? And, the third option is the United States should be at peace. That's what we should aim for. That's the goal. And you can be at peace even if people do not feel peaceful towards you. I mean, that to me actually is the big conceptual breakthrough we need. And I understand why that might sound scary to people, because there is a degree to which, peace is not unilaterally imposed, right? Peace is struck between different entities. But just because there is the existence of actors out there, non-state actors, that are plotting to and wish to do, horrible things to American citizens, does not mean we need to be at war.
we need to find the next version of some type of like of a Cold War, I guess, in some respects. I mean, you think about that. We've always had the auspices of war, even when we weren't at war, via the Cold War in some respects. But we need to find another, because it just doesn't seem like the American sort of sensibility will accept we're at peace right now.
Right.
All right. Well, I know we just got a couple of minutes here. I want to take just a very quick, sort of abrupt turn here, because it's been a while since we talked, and there's been a lot of sort of victories on the social liberalism front, but not so much on the economic liberalism front, as it were. I mean, there's maybe been some sort of, I guess, I don't know, some default or not major losses, but just give me your sense. I mean, over the past year, we've seen the sort of the reversal of what was, at least in 2004, maybe even in 2008, the perspective on women's rights in some ways, particularly abortion rights, sort of more fervently adopted by the Democratic Party. We have seen the fall of homophobia essentially as a leverage point for conservatives, and now is a leverage point for liberalism. We saw a similar thing, I think, that's happening to some degree on immigration, though I don't know if we're going to be able to get any type of meaningful reform, but that remains to be seen. What do you make of that sea change, which I think is pretty dramatic over the past 18 months, even 2 years, but not so much in terms of economic liberalism?
Yeah, I think that's basically right. I do think that the austerity caucus is on weaker footing now than it was a year ago. Wouldn't you agree?
Which is not necessarily yes, I would agree with that. Which is not necessarily a victory. It's more of like a
no. It's not a victory. It's just that the things have stopped moving in a bad direction.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they are not moving. It's not like the things that would be great to do, which is like essentially the Federal Reserve, forgive a bunch of debt or a massive stimulus or huge principal
increasing Social Security benefits, dropping the retirement age.
Right. Like all sorts of the proactive things that I think you and I agree would be awesome are not at all on the political horizon, but at least the people who are advocating the worst, most destructive forms of policy aren't the most empowered actors in American politics, which about a year ago they were, essentially. And in some ways, we're living with the vestigial consequences of that empowerment in the Budget Control Act, which created the sequester, which is the thing that is the next kind of austerity crunch.
And I got to say, the reason why that austerity push, I think, is slowed has basically come at the expense of a tremendous amount of suffering in Europe. I mean, in the past 12 months, we've got the IMF coming out and saying essentially like, "Oh, we were wrong about that." I mean,
well, you know what the other thing though is? I think part of it has to do with the fact that there was a misunderstanding. There was a misunderstanding of the politics and the mandate that I think Republicans had, right? This is a big fixed belief of mine, which I'm open to being wrong on this, but so far all my observations and data have confirmed it, which may be confirmation bias, but I'm sticking with it for now, which is that like no one actually cares about the deficit. No one actually cares about the size of government in the abstract, right? People care about their current situation, or they care about a set of principles and beliefs they have, or they care about what their affiliations are with other people in their coalitions and how welcome they feel in that. But people just don't care about the deficit. And so there is actually no domestic democratic constituency for austerity. There just is not. The Tea Party misunderstood their large victory in 2010 as being an expression of there being a real powerful, concentrated domestic constituency for austerity, and that wasn't it. It was basically people were ticked off that there was a Democratic president and the economy was bad, and so they showed up in a kind of expression of backlash, right? Mm-hmm. And the electorate lost a lot of the people who had voted for Barack Obama who are not, midterm voters, and that produced this Tea Party class that then actually those voters don't actually want to see things like cuts to Medicare or Social Security. They just don't, right? So part of the reason they've lost their power is because there is elite constituency, there are interests who really want austerity, but there is just not a very big actual Democratic constituency of citizens for it.
Right, but is there when austerity is imposed, is there ever? That's...
right. In some ways, that's the whole thesis of Naomi Klein's shock doctrine, right? Which is that in every case that you have harsh austerity imposed, it cannot be imposed in any kind of overwhelming democratic fashion because no one wants to shock themselves, right? It always has to be either imposed in crisis or imposed by creditors who have undue force or, imposed in some way that is not a kind of bottom-up imposition. I think that's broadly true.
So in some respect, the lament that those of us on the left have that President Obama missed his opportunity to institute some real financial reforms and perhaps to create a more progressive role for government. The window for those austeritarians, if you will, has also closed in some respects.
I think it has. It hasn't in a cyclical fashion. The irony is that, they are their own worst enemy time and time again. They have saved progressives from deals that we would have hated
Definitely.
A whole bunch of times. Had they come to the table early on healthcare, they could have had some small piecemeal thing that was, a third of the size of the ACA. Had they come to the table during the, the debt ceiling negotiations, they probably could have had changes to Medicare eligibility or something else awful like that. Even during this latest round in the lame duck, if they come to the table on that, they never do. And part of the reason they never do, I think, is there's two theories for that. One is that they're, implacable radicals. The other is that they recognize that their voters don't want that, right?
Right.
In some ways, the whole game has been, in some ways, to try to psych the Democrats into being the ones to do something like raising the Medicare eligibility age and then run against the Democrats as the party that raised the eligibility
Well, that's what
age.
they did in 2010 in many respects with the Medicare, right? Right, and go ahead.
So the reason that they missed their moment in some ways is an outgrowth of the fact that, again, like I said, the politics were never there to produce the results that they said they had the mandate to produce.
And in some respects, the Democrats just were just almost there. I think it was quite clear that President Obama was there. It's just that he clearly was willing to put on the table those type of cuts. It's just, I think that whatever, I guess by hook or crook, it just didn't work out.
And one thing I will say for the president so far, whatever his intentions were, and I think a lot of times he was really willing to make deals that I think you and I would think were awful. It is remarkable that we've gotten out of the last 2 years of a Tea Party caucus and in the House and sort of empowered in the Senate without any real permanent changes to the big social programs. There are some permanent changes that were in the way Medicare is going to make payments that were in the Affordable Care Act. But you could have imagined, something like raising the eligibility age, something like changing the calculation of CPI and Social Security, things that aren't just aspects of the cyclical budget that have to get relitigated everywhere by nature, but are actually permanent alterations to parts of the social safety net. And so far, we have managed to avoid permanent alterations to the basic structures and eligibilities of the safety net, even if there has been cyclical austerity imposed, which has been, tremendously destructive and will continue to be tremendously destructive, but has the advantage of being something that, by definition, has to get refought over every year.
Right. I mean, it's essentially. I mean, it's the. I mean, defense is. I mean, and of course, I mean, to a certain extent, defense is easier in some respects, particularly when you're in the Alamo.
Particularly when you're defending popular programs.
Right. Yes.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing, right? Like, people don't like. I mean, the polling. You talked about this, and we talked about it on my show, and a lot of people talked about it. I mean, when they were floating raising the Medicare eligibility age, which was gonna close the deficit as much as like. Basically, I want to say the same amount as like all the tax extenders increased the deficit. It was like not that much money at all, right?
Right.
When they talked about raising the Medicare eligibility age, they did polling on it. It was like you couldn't find
70s or 80s.
Like the idea.
Yes. I mean, you could walk through a crowd at a Glenn Beck rally, and still, that's the one thing that they would all agree on. Yeah. No cutting Medicare.
All right. Hey, Sam, I got to hop off. I got to go be on Alex Wagner's show.
Oh, go.
But
all right. Well,
great,
Chris
man.
Hayes, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. That would have been pretty awesome if he missed the show that he was supposed to be on. That would have been quite something. Chris Hayes, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Frank Conniff. My God. Is this really free?
What a show.
Is this really free?
Jeez.
Give me a break. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. Such a pleasure to welcome to this program for maybe not the first time. I mean, the first time of this iteration, but I'm convinced that you were on the first iteration of this program back in the Air America days. The wonderful Frank Conniff. Hello, Frank.
Hey, Sam. How you doing? And yes, I was indeed on the Air America Majority Report a couple times.
Now, Frank, I don't know if I say I grew up, but certainly Mystery Science 3000 was a big part of. I don't know. There was something about that show that was seminal. I can't even remember when it happened. I don't remember anything anymore because of my child.
It was I was on it from 1990 to 1995, and it's very cool how people to this day it has more fans than ever. So that's a really great thing, and we actually do a live version of the show that we tour with that we call Cinematic Titanic, that I do with Joel Hodgson and J. Ellis Weinstein and Mary Jo Peele and Trace Beaulieu, the whole original cast of the show, and we perform live, and the audiences are so enthusiastic. So it's all these years later, it's more popular than ever. So it's very cool.
I mean, obviously you've done a ton of stuff since then, but for me, like that that show. I mean, there's a couple of shows like this, maybe, and maybe it's just a function of my age. I mean, I was just starting comedy, actually, I think, around that time, quasi-professionally. And but that show is sort of like it had sort of like a Velvet Underground quality to it, where the implications of that show sort of rippled way beyond, I think it was on Comedy Central at the time, right? Or was it on
Yeah, it was on. It was originally on the Comedy Channel before it became and then it was on Comedy Central. And it's interesting that you mention the Velvet Underground because we were sort of like it, at least in the sense that we were all addicted to heroin while we were doing the show. So,
that came through. that really did come through. There's a special quality to something like that. But that's funny. And then, of course, you were writing for Air America. I mean, Skip had a couple of years.
Yeah, a few years later, Liz Winstead hired me to come to Air America, and you were there, and Janine, and a lot of really funny people on the writing staff there, and so that was a great experience while it lasted.
The writers would all sit. I mean, when we first got to Air America, we were in the WLIB studios, which were sort of like, I mean, at the time I referred to it as a mix between college radio and college radio. And, but without the sort of like technical quality, the technical wasn't quite up to speed of a college radio station. But the comedy writers were literally, I'm telling this you obviously know this, but were placed on the same floor as some of the offices, but they were sharing an office with essentially what constituted like a boiler room of
we shared an office
pump and
with,
dump of stock market traders.
Yeah, stock market traders who were yelling, at the top of their, and were like total, it was like trying to write comedy in a room where the worst morning zoo radio program is going on very loudly across the table from you. These stockbrokers were total like frat boy kind of people, and it was just and we got shuttled around the building a lot. They would find you different places. They never found a permanent place for the writers. Eventually, I think the theory was that comedy writers work best around asbestos. So, they put us in this hallway that was, that looked like it was about to fall apart at any minute.
It was just the juxtaposition between like this sort of like corner full of comedy writers who, are not in general, with all due respect, not the best dressed, not the, sort of like, hygiene's not like, and, just sort of looking like they've been up all night, but they probably have. And and then sort of juxtaposing it with all these sort of like frat boys dressed in suits who are just like on in their cubicles just going, I just took $60,000 from grandma. And,
right, exactly.
It was and now you're writing for John Fugelsang and the Viewpoint with
I came back to New York to write for John Fugelsang. Originally, they were going to give John a different show, and for whatever reason, that never happened. And then, as you know, Al Jazeera bought Current TV, and so now, so when Al Jazeera bought Current, Elliot Spitzer left his show, Viewpoint, and then they gave his show to John. So we've been doing that. And it's been, we've been really enjoying it, and just, it's once again, it's like sort of like Air America in the sense that it's kind of an unpredictable situation, but we're enjoying it, and I actually am preparing to go into a pitch to Al Jazeera next week. Some of my ideas for comedy shows on Al Jazeera. I have a few that I'm going to pitch. I have one, Mirth Mosque, which will be a comedy series that takes place in a mosque, and I have another one. Oprah's Next Fatwa is a show I'm going to pitch.
What's that one?
That is just Oprah. We want to get celebrities involved with things. So,
no, yes, of course. You want to stunt cast.
I don't have a concept for that beyond the title, to tell you the truth. But
Yeah, well, that's
so
what that's the way.
I'm hoping, because I know when I think Al Jazeera, I think comedy. So I really hope there's a place for me in the new regime.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're definitely onto something. I mean, you want to go in with 3 different shows, though. I think would be my.
Well, the other show idea I have is a comedy series about 9/11 called "We Can Laugh About It Now."
You may, yeah. You might want to have also just maybe 4 ideas to pitch.
Okay, 4. Okay,
four.
Yeah, I'm
might be.
brainstorming constantly for to fit into this new situation.
That would be great branding for Al Jazeera. I have a feeling that last show probably would not would not fly. And so let me. I mean, I had done a movie.
But you know what? Seriously though, Al Jazeera. I don't know if there's going to be a place for me there, but it's actually a really great thing that they're going to be on in America, and the news is so bad in this country that having a whole new news network devoted to straightforward reporting of the news is actually going to be a really great thing.
Yes, I know. I agree with that totally. Actually, I mean, I think the Al Jazeera English is about as good of a news source as you can get. That is, and if they bring that level of intelligence and thoughtfulness to it, it's going to be. I think it's going to do. I think it's going to do quite well. Part of it is part of it is, of course, is always clearance. That's always a big issue.
Well, I from everything I can tell, they are going to bring a big element of intelligence and thoughtfulness, and that's why I doubt that there's a place for me there. But it's going to be pretty great, though.
Yeah, and one of the things, I mean, just getting back to John's show is that, and I've been a guest on it a couple of times over, I guess it's been 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month now, I guess.
Right.
And I think I may have the distinction of being on the first night of not only Spitzer's replacement show, but also on Fugelsang's replacing of Spitzer. I mean, there's not many people who have done that, I think. So I feel pretty good about that. But what I've been impressed with is how well you guys have been able to sort of make it John's show in a very short period of time. I mean, I think, a lot of that credit obviously goes to John because he's got a very sort of a very clear sense of what he wants to do. But I've been pretty impressed with that because I did see so that happened, I think it was, which was the first there was 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah, that was the weekly show that we did for last fall.
And I feel that they've been you guys have been really good at sort of making that show John's. I mean, short of the coffee mugs.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, actually, the staff at Viewpoint, which you probably know, is really great, and they're really good at what they do. And so John has just come in, and he hasn't tried to shake things up or anything. We've just come in and we let them do what they're really good at, which is gathering news and preparing segments with really good guests to talk about whatever's going on that day, and then John and myself helping John by helping writing his commentaries and jokes for him and stuff. We've just inserted John's sensibility into something that was already in place.
And I got to say, I mean, you guys deserve a lot of credit because
thank you.
That you guys have done that really well. That's a big hill to climb, and I'm sure the tens of people who have access to Current and appreciate that.
Yes, the people who who can hear about it from someone who has it somewhere.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, now, Frank, let me tell you just remind people that every Friday we have a special guest or one of our our regulars come on to give me a suggestion as to what I should watch on either Netflix, on my Roku, or Apple TV, or Amazon streaming, because I don't get to see movies.
Right.
I don't get to go out to see movies anymore because, well, it was, I had I think like a 3-week window between the time that my daughter got old enough where I was allowed to go out. You don't want to deal with a babysitter, but even still, and then my wife got pregnant again, so that all went out the window. So I'm not allowed really to go out.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah. And and so I need to stream. I need to watch a movie at home after my daughter goes to bed, and if I can negotiate with my wife, and who better to recommend a movie than a guy who?
Okay.
No, I don't want one of those like the giant whatever it was. All I just remember that giant movie that you guys used to rag on.
The which movie?
The one with the giant.
Oh, The Amazing Colossal Man.
Yes, exactly.
Which they're remaking with Chris Christie, by the way. But anyway,
no, they're not. That's not. Come on. That's so. Come on. You there?
Yes.
Did you hang up on me?
Here.
Were you upset? Because I didn't.
No.
You all right? Did you pass out?
I did for a minute. Whenever I make a Chris Christie joke, I have a bit of a coronary, but I'm fine now.
So what do you got? What do you got for me?
Well, I am, for Mystery Science Theater, we are known for making fun of a lot of bad science fiction movies. So it's a big deal to me when I see a good science fiction movie. And the one that I know is available on demand and is probably available for streaming that I saw recently that I thought was really good was Looper.
Ooh, yes,
I've seen that.
No, I have not. I've seen that. I've seen that around. I've been in a hotel last week, and I noticed that, and I tried to order it, but the satellite was out apparently, and so I couldn't order it.
Okay, well, if you can watch it this weekend, I thought it was one of the best sci-fi movies I had seen in a long time.
Wow.
It has,
and it's got action too.
First of all, it has a very cool kind of basic sci-fi premise of like time traveling and hitmen from the future who come to the present to or so the hitmen are in the present and they kill they shoot they do mob hits on people who are sent back from the future. So it has that kind of premise, but then it kind of takes that and then kind of goes off in an unexpected direction, and it becomes a very human kind of story, and it was very powerful, I thought, and I really enjoyed it a lot.
Wow, I'm sold. Now I got it. This is going to be one where I'm going to have to like, how do I sell this to my wife? Who?
Oh, you know what? It actually, I think it has like a very strong element for women in it. Emily Blunt has a very large and very strong part in it. And
how
I don't
violent
want to
is
say
it?
more because
how violent
because
is
I don't
it?
want to.
Okay, don't give it away. But how violent is it?
It has like it has your basic action movie violence, but it's not excessive compared to a lot of things, I would say, and that's just coming from my perspective. And I don't know how violent it would be for her, but it has people being shot and stuff like that.
Okay, all right, but that's fine. I mean, it's always touch and go. We're in our final month, or really the final weeks of pregnancy, and so I'm not going to say that makes people moody, but that makes people moody. Let me just say that makes people
yeah.
goody. How's that?
What?
I'm not going to say it makes people moody. I'm going to say it makes people goody.
Goody. Okay. Well, I don't know if it'll affect your goodiness, but I'll also say that without giving much away, that the Emily Blunt character is a mother in the movie, and that's a very big part of the plot.
All right. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sounds good. And so now what's going to happen with when Al Jazeera happens? Are you going to? I mean,
well, like I said, I don't know. I think if they keep on, if they keep John there, which I think is a good possibility, because as you know, he's really great, and I think they are aware of that and appreciate them. So I think there is a nothing is certain, but I think there's a possibility that they'll keep him on in some way, and so therefore, perhaps I'll get to stay on. But I do know, and this is very cool. They're all of the people there who work in actual news capacities, who are actually from the world of news, which I'm not. I'm from the world of comedy. But the people there who are news people have all been assured, have been given a very strong indication that they're all going to get to stay and keep working there. From what I've been hearing, there's not going to be a lot of massive layoffs there. They're going to keep on as many people as they can from current to maybe work in different news gathering positions, and then they're going to hire a bunch of other people too. So for the people who work there, it's pretty. Al Jazeera is being pretty great from what I can see.
Yeah, it's very un-Air American in that respect.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
right.
Frank Conniff, real pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Oh, thank you. It was great to be on.
All right, thanks. And Looper, I will check it out, folks. I'm going to check that movie out. I was already looking at that, and I heard mixed things. But I hear mixed things about everything now. That's the way. All right. Well,
I heard good things about it.
We didn't get a Reefer Cake song. No Reefer Cake, right?
I don't think so.
I know. He took the vacation, too. All right, folks. We're going to head into the better half of the program. The number is 646-257-3920. Going to be... This is just a wonderful piece. We're going to do this... one would expect this, but it's hard to imagine that one could expect it in this sort of blatant manner. A wonderful piece on Fox News telling us why we can't have solar in this country. And it's actually it goes beyond what they say. This is sort of, you got to hear it, and you got to hear the background to this piece because it's fantastic. We're going to play it in the better half.
So if you're wondering if today is a good time to become a member to all you freebies, I would say yes.
Oh, indeed. Indeed. It's always a good day to become a member. Number 646-257-3920. I forgot to put on the IM. I will do so now. Of course, we will take all your calls and more. We're anticipating being here on Monday, though in the event that it's just too tricky, we will endeavor to put up an interview that we've pre-recorded. So we will hopefully be here on Monday, and have a great weekend. Stay safe if you're getting salamied with the snow. We will be back in just a moment. If you're watching us live, or if rather listening live, or if you are a member. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. I guess Matt needs a new computer.
That's really weird.
What happened?
It just completely, everything just completely froze.
On your computer?
On my computer. I wasn't even touching it.
Now you're in Sam Cedarville. That's what happens with my computer. We are back on the Majority Report. Sam Cedar, welcome to the better half of the program. Number 646-257-3920. We will get to your call in just a moment. Your calls and your IMs. First, this is a wonderful little segment on Fox News today.
We have to wait for that one.
Oh, why? Because you're...
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Let's take call right now.
Let's go to the phones. Who's this? Jim from Pennsylvania. Welcome to the program, Jim.
Yeah, Sam. I tried to call in Tuesday, but I got disconnected for some reason, so I'm trying again today.
Okay. Well, you've been successful.
All right. Yes, and I've been watching your videos from this recent week. Seeing you talk about your opposition to Obama's drone strike policy and his policy which lets him kill Americans at whim.
Yes?
And, yes, I have to ask, during the lead up to the election, you knew he was doing this, you knew he would continue to do this, and yet you still encouraged people to vote for him. Why then do you think you have the right to complain when you directly contributed to the problem?
Well, I mean, not only do I have the right to complain. I mean, now I also complained then too. We had many. I mean, to the extent that we knew the parameters of this, yeah, we had many conversations about it on this program.
Yes, I know that, and every time you come off like an intellectually dishonest tool.
I see. Now, you still paying your taxes, Jim?
What?
You still paying your taxes?
Sam, are we really going to do this again? Look,
I know. You just called in to have the exact same argument with me. I actually believe that you can vote for a president and still criticize their policies. Why don't you understand that?
I understand that, but how come whenever it's something that you disagree with and it's another party, you say it's the people who support that party that are in the wrong, and yet when it's your guy who's doing something wrong, suddenly we're all to blame? Why don't you grow a spine and admit that you voted for a war criminal? You have blood on your hands, and not all of us are responsible for this mess. No,
we are all responsible for this mess. Indeed, of course. Of course. Do you think this policy would have gone away if Mitt Romney had been elected?
I didn't want Romney or Obama elected.
Well, boo-hoo. I'm sorry, Jim. You don't get to choose, frankly, and that's unfortunate. But those were the two choices.
Yeah. You're hopeless, Sam. You're hopeless.
I see. Is that it?
No. I just got one more thing to say.
Okay.
I hope you lose this cushy job you have. I hope you lose everything you hold valuable. I hope your wife leaves you, take your kids, and you get to see them again. And I hope you die on the street alone and unloved. Fuck you, Sam Cedar.
It's Cedar. It's Cedar. It's Cedar. But thank you, John. Wow.
Where did that come from? Where did that come from, man? That was kind of intense.
Yeah, that was a little bit intense.
Sam Cedar every day.
I know. I mean, it really is. That is a very hurtful thing that he has not picked up on how I pronounce my name. Lawyer Matthew just IM'd me with this question. Was that your dad? I mean, look, this is the reality that the reason why Jim has to end the conversation that way with me is because he cannot accept the idea that we had a limited choice in that election. That is the reality. Okay, you could say, yes, you could cast your vote for someone else, but that person was not going to win. All right? I don't like the fact that, Well, it depends on which poll, but that the majority of Americans don't care about this, about the drone policy. I don't like the fact that the majority of liberals, as far as I can tell, don't care about this policy. There's nothing I can do about that. There are certain realities that are bigger than us. And so I do what I can, which is to rail against this policy, which I think is wrong and is illegal and is arguably a criminal violation of international law. And that is what I can do. I can't really get fired from this job, but it's certainly possible that my wife could leave me. I don't think it'll be because of what Jim is talking about.
I think he brought that up because of the whole podcast issue the podcast community is facing.
I mean, if he's got patent issues, that's fine. But you know what I would do? I would still just do it here.
That's giving Jim a lot of credit to be up on the ball.
I don't know about that.
Well, I assume he's a listener to the show because he does follow along.
I don't know that he listens. He doesn't even know how I pronounce my name. What?
You could grow a spine, stop being a left-wing Limbaugh.
Well, I guess, according to Jim, what I really should be doing is just not complaining about it at all.
Or voting for Gary Johnson or something.
I mean, I guess that's the point. But let's move on. Maybe we'll hear from Jim again another time. So this is wonderful example of just how craven Fox News is. Fox and Friends had a piercing segment today on gave them an opportunity to talk about Solyndra. I don't think that in their conversation about the possibility of green energy in this country, they mentioned Fast and Furious, but perhaps we may have missed that comment in their discussion. But they brought on a so-called expert to talk about how you just can't have solar power in the United States. And really what this should be about is we should be supporting things like, fracking. And so here is, we will start the conversation with Steve Ducey, and then it goes to a woman named Shibani Joshi. Is that right? Is that her name?
I think it's Shibani.
Shibani Joshi. Joshi. And she is brought on as a special guest to talk about the viability of solar. Is that right?
I think she's actually a Fox employee. I think she's a correspondent or an analyst or something. Yeah, but I think she's an employee of Fox Business.
Okay, it's Fox Business. And so let's hear her, this conversation about the viability of solar in the United States.
The United States simply hasn't figured out how to do solar effectively and cheaply. You look at the country of Germany. It's working out great for them.
It is working out great for them, and we just have to figure out where we want to be as a nation. I mean, the problem is that with the solar industry, you have the Chinese coming in and undercutting the markets, and so that's what the subsidies were doing. It was making us more competitive with the Chinese. Well, then they start to cut prices again, and then we start to throw more money. That's not a viable business solution.
What was Germany doing correct? Are they just a smaller country that made it more feasible?
They're a smaller country, and they've got lots of sun, right? They've got a lot more sun than we do, and the problem is it's a cloudy day and it's raining, you're not going to have it. I mean, this nation is vast and beautiful in its makeup. In California, it's a great solution. Here on the East Coast, it's just not going to work. So you have to have a little bit more of a mixed solution. Of course, nat gas is a big part of that too.
Because we got plenty of that.
Yep.
All right, Shivani, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks.
Yeah, we got plenty of natural gas now. Germany. We have you can't see it, but I'm looking at a graph. Of that basically shows how much sun the United States gets annually and how much sun Germany gets. Germany gets about as much sun annually as Seattle does. Now, Seattle's not as sun deprived, but there's plenty of sun in this big, beautiful country that she's describing. So this expert they've brought on got the whole story of why Germany was able to do this and convert much of their energy usage and in their future usage to solar. Completely wrong. It's not because of... and the reason why we can't do it has nothing to do with the lack of sun in the United States. This is America gets sun. There's no big tree somewhere down in somewhere like in the Caribbean or something that blocks the sun in this country. And just to sort of top it off, she's right. There's so much nat gas. Joshi is married, apparently, to a guy who is a vice president for energy investments at Energy Capital Partners, which apparently is a big proponent of things like fossil fuel. Just coincidentally. But I'm sure that once Fox figures that out, they'll issue some type of note that we should say just full disclosure. I'm sure.
Come to sunny Germany. Come to our world famous beaches and get the suntan in Germany.
Exactly. Forget about Corfu, folks. It's Germany you really want to be in if you're interested in getting a suntan. All right, let's go to the IM's Klug. I love the sound from the landline phone Chris uses. Was that the curly cord making the noise? Sweet daddy, down dog. Mystery Science 3000 was a weird trip. No wonder. Harmony Rockets. Sam, have you read anything about the hacked George Bush emails? Have you seen his paintings that he had emailed to his sister? One painting he made of himself is standing outside a shower and staring into a mirror as if he's always in contemplative mood in his post-presidency, that he can never really be clean. In the painting, he's not looking directly at the mirror, but yet he sees his reflection at an impossible angle, as if he's disembodied. Not a great painter, but fascinating stuff. Yes, this is there is George Bush's or the Bush family email accounts were 6 different email accounts were hacked. And you can see them. It's reported via the Smoking Gun. Supposedly, a hacker named Guccifer has hacked these things. And some of them are like paintings and pictures. And George Bush has been spending his time painting, apparently. And there is one painting where George Bush is, presumably it's a self-portrait. He's in a shower. And he is staring at the shower wall, as we all do. But apparently this is a shower that's really big. It almost looks like it could be just a snippet of a locker room shower, because he's not even standing under the water. He's standing like a foot and a half to the right of where the water is falling down. And on the nozzle of the shower is a mirror. And even though George Bush, it appears from his painting, is staring at a wall 2 feet to the side, you can see his reflection in the mirror. And it's this very strange, and also not to mention that the mirror is significantly higher, about 6 inches higher than where his face is in reality. And he's not even turning towards the mirror. So there's this sort of, now, I don't know. This could be either he's just a bad painter or he's, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with like history's going to be my judge. My reflection carries further off in the distance. It is apart from me. So, this is how he's describing it to Laura. Laura goes, "Oh, George, that's not very good. You know, there's the composition. No, Laura, you see, my reflection carries into both in a temporal and in a spatial way. It is apart from me because I'm misunderstood. But down the further away you get from my reflection, as in vis-a-vis history, I will be judged differently. and people will see the real me, but only through a mirror in a shower. No, I was not drinking during the entire course in which I drew this painting. Wonderful.
I know that sounds kind of gay, but it's true.
Let's go to Cool J 146. You should have asked Chris about this perplexing tweet from an hour ago. Oh, yeah, he tweeted out a tweet saying an honest acceptance of the drone program, where a guy basically said, yeah, I'm being hypocritical. I just trust Obama more. I mean, I don't think he was. I think he was talking about this guy being honest with himself rather than, perceiving it that. I want to see a transcript of the Brennan hearing and count the number of times he said the textbook evasive answer. Let me look at that and get back to you, and not a lawyer. Well, he said, that was the thing about Brennan, okay? He said, here he is. This is one of the things that really stuck out, because at one point, Brennan goes through explaining why there is plenty of legal justification for the targeted killing program, as if he had a very clear understanding of the law. However, and, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I've read all the OLC memos. The law says I can do this. However, despite the fact that there has been numerous findings that torture is illegal, apparently John Brennan cannot say so. Here he is being asked by Carl Levin, is torture illegal?
Civilized society should employ. My question is this: in your opinion, does waterboarding constitute torture?
The Attorney General has referred to waterboarding as torture. Many people have referred to it as torture. Attorney General, Premier, law enforcement officer, and lawyer of this country. And as you well know, and as we've had the discussion, Senator, the term torture has a lot of legal and political implications. It is something that should have been banned long ago. It never should have taken place, in my view. And therefore, if I were to go to CIA, it would never, in fact, be brought back.
Do you have a personal opinion as to whether waterboarding is torture?
I have a personal opinion that waterboarding is reprehensible, and it's something that should not be done. And again, I am not a lawyer, Senator, and I can't address that question.
Well, you've read opinions as to whether or not waterboarding is torture, and I'm just saying, you accept those opinions of the Attorney General. That's my question.
Well, Senator, I've read a lot of legal opinions. I read an Office of Legal Counsel opinion in the previous administration that said, in fact, waterboarding could be used. So from the standpoint of that, I cannot point to a single legal document on this issue. But as far as I'm concerned, waterboarding is something that never should have been employed, and as far as I'm concerned, never will be if I have anything to do with it.
Is waterboarding banned by the Geneva Conventions?
I believe the Attorney General also has said that it's contrary and contravention of the Geneva Convention. Again, I am not a lawyer or a legal scholar determination about what is in violation of an international convention.
So here you have Brennan refusing to say whether or not waterboarding is torture, refusing to say, because at that point, we all know that torture is illegal in this, in according to American law, according to international law. And he cannot say that this torture practice is illegal, I guess, presumably because it would implicate people that he knows would have committed an illegal act. People that he would maybe end up being boss of, maybe people he works with. But yet, of course, his legal perception is a lot stronger when it comes to whether or not the program of targeted killing that he constructed is legal. It's funny how that works out. Good thing for him, he didn't go to law school.
All that talk of waterboarding, I'm surprised the senator didn't have anything funny to say, but wait.
Right. Yes, that's the thing. One of the highlights, of course, of the hearing where you have Republican Senator Burr. Where's Burr from?
Burr is from North Carolina.
Senator Burr from North Carolina. wanting to just, let's loosen things up here. Everybody's talking about this targeted killing and how is torture illegal, is waterboarding torture, blah, blah, blah. Let me do one of these for you.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm going to try to be brief because I've noticed you're on your fourth glass of water, and I don't want to be accused of waterboarding you.
Oh, gosh. They all can't be gems, folks. They all can't be gems. That's just wonderful. I mean, look, I just don't think that it really is proper decorum or it sends the right message. And frankly, maybe it sends at least a message we should be listening to. But a guy on the Senate Intelligence Committee believes that the idea of waterboarding being torture is a joke. It's just a joke. And that it's really just basically somebody drinking water from a glass. Brr. Cool J146, Germany has more sun than Arizona, California, and Nevada. Yuma, Arizona is sunny 90% of daylight hours annually. Phoenix, Las Vegas, 85%. Other major southwestern cities have similar scores. Nathan Flowers, Looper was all right. It wasn't great. It had a weird and totally unnecessary tie-in. Don't kid yourself. It's pretty violent. 1001, Sam, you should be on Leo Laporte's This Week in Tech podcast show. Sometimes has libertarians on his show. You would have a blast if he was... if there were libertarians on at the same time. I would love to. Tell him to have me on. Why does Jim, I love Sam Cedar, why does Jim always sound out of breath whenever he calls in? And name suggestion for your child, Jason Cedar.
I think Jim is just so morally enraged at Sam's intellectual dishonesty and spinelessness that he's literally out of breath.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, Hopefeld, curious why Chris Hayes, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all mainstream media keep harping on the citizenship status of the drone program targets. If it's illegal to kill this American, it would still be illegal to kill him if he was an alien, say a Canadian. The only thing an American gets in terms of rights is the Article 4 privileges and immunities and the 14th Amendment extension. The Privileges and Immunities Clause was explained by the Bushrod Washington in the Clamors case, Corfield v. Coriel, and it means that Americans have the right to go to any state and work and live there. Canadians don't have such right. Congress would need to pass a law like NAFTA to extend rights to live or work in America. However, Congress cannot pass any law depriving an American of the right to live or work in America. I think in the main, you're right. We have constitutional protections that we afford prisoners who are not Americans. The Constitution clearly applies. I think the argument is just that it's harder. I think the argument is that it's harder to make. It's far more ambiguous as to whether or not this person's an enemy combatant. In other words, if you were on a battlefield and you were engaging in a war and you sent a drone down to function like you would a jet and fired on these soldiers in war, there would be no arguments, at least in terms of the legality. Let's put aside morality for a moment of war or et cetera, et cetera. If an American citizen was also in that situation, same thing. I think the reason why people highlight the American citizen thing is because there is concern that the legal justification, it's much harder to, it's much easier to fudge whether or not someone's an enemy combatant if they're not an American. I think I think legally, but certainly in terms of whether or not people are going to pay attention to the argument. So I think people who have been offended by this policy, the targeted assassination policy, think that they have far more opportunity to engage people when they raise the issue of American citizens. But from a legal standpoint, I'm not sure that there's a broad distinction, frankly. Presumably, if you're going to, and we've talked about sort of the targeted assassinations in a broader sense in the past. I think part of it also, the reason why that we're hearing these conversations is that the OLC, or at least the ones that we've been talking about, are focused on an American citizen. So, Hopefeld, Keystone XL pipeline would carry bitumen. It's not oil because oil is a liquid. They would need to heat the Canadian bitumen before it can flow through the pipes. Yes. Liquid ones would not be deheated. Solids, if heated, become liquid. So it's not an oil sands. It's not even a tar sand. It is closer to coal. Bitumen is a solid and doesn't float in water like oil does. The safest way to transport solids over land is rail. Pipelines are for liquids and gases. Yes. Jay Tingle, that call reminds me of my most recent job interview. I got the job. Do not name your kid Jason. Jim is a good name. Nobody dysfunctional could be named Jim. Half tone deaf. Blammo, thanks for keeping live radio real, Sam. Kyle, now that the new best reason for having implemented the phone system. Thank you, Jim. 1603, there has to be a complete shift in consciousness in order to have anyone other than someone from the two major parties win a presidential election. Yes, I agree with that. And that complete shift in consciousness will, in many respects, I think, would in many respects negate many of the reasons why you would need to vote for a third party. I mean, that's the point. That is one of the big points of this. All right, let's go to one more. To be fair, let's have a dissenting view that President Obama's targeted assassination policy is incorrect. Let's bring on a strategic analyst from Fox News, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, and hear what he has to say about this targeted assassination program.
Some people believe that you shouldn't kill American citizens who become terrorists without giving them the due process of the law. Your reaction?
Pause it. Well, Now, any rational, sane person would say, well, that's part of the problem, lady. We don't know that they've become terrorists because we're leaving that designation up to a very small group of people who are in the business of killing lots of people and have a calculation in their mind that even if it's 50-50, we're going to assume that they're terrorists by definition. And that's one thing that a rational person would say. But let's hear what the strategic analyst, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, says.
I mean, that's absolute nonsense. The fundamental purpose of that legitimizes a state, the existence of a government, is to protect its citizens against violence, foreign and domestic. Now, when someone, a U.S. citizen, takes up arms against the United States, betrays his country, joins a terrorist organization dedicated to our destruction, and uses his knowledge of America to help inspire, plan, and execute terrorist attacks that kill American citizens, guess what? This guy is not double parked. He's not a shoplifter. Throughout our history, we have killed Americans who took up arms against their law-abiding fellow citizens. This is not a legal issue. It's not an issue at all. If an American turns his back on America and tries to kill Americans, you kill the sucker, period. No legal issue, well, kill him.
Agreed from this point of view. Real quickly, though, do you fear that that would be carried beyond that? That's what some people are concerned about.
No, I mean, all this hysteria, it's all the black helicopters are coming to take my Hershey bar. No, the president, Obama is doing one sensible thing, just one sensible thing in killing terrorists. Let's give him credit for the one smart thing he's doing, whatever his motivation may be. All right.
Hershey bar? Somebody's coming to take my Hershey bar? I mean, now, understand that at Fox, a strategic analyst, where the way they find their strategic analysts is they go to the local bar and find the drunkest guy and bring him into Fox Studios. But of course, the issue here is not whether or not on a battlefield you can kill an American who picks up a gun and is fighting you. The question here is, how do you determine that? How do you have a targeted assassination program where you allow essentially no review as to whether or not what is clearly an ambiguous determination, whether or not that person has done so? It's just absurd. And I love the fact that guys are like, let's just give him credit for one of the sensible things he's done, for whatever his motives may be. What does that mean?
I explained that to you. I think what it is that, Obama's part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they are in conflict with Al-Qaeda. So it's sort of like an enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing. So Obama's going to take out some of these Al-Qaeda guys to support his work in the Muslim Brotherhood.
Bingo. Bingo. You've cracked the code. Unbelievable. 1004. Well, Jim sounds like a nice guy. Let's all just vote third party and pretend that we're absolved from holding our government accountable for the things they do in our name. Speaking of fracking, did you see the story about how Pennsylvania was going to use fracking wastewater as road salt? They're already doing it in Ohio. Oh my gosh. I don't even know. I'm not even sure I believe that it's really, because that's a great way of saying, like, look, it's just road salt. We're not putting anything into the ground. I don't know if I even buy it. Is it the fluid after it's been used? Daddy Zing, Fox needs to buy a globe. Spay F. I think it's worse than not knowing how to pronounce your name. I think he thought mispronouncing your name was the ultimate insult, which makes him even more clueless. Barmstirred, I upgraded to a dirty F and hippie yesterday. That should make us feel both awesome. That's right. I just doubled up on the shofar fanfare for you. Thank you, Barmstead. I really appreciate it. Abaddon, on solar, it's even worse than that. In England, people are powering their entire homes with solar panels on their roof. And the houses there are narrow. There's not much all that a roof on them. As for sun, some summers I can't remember what it looks like, and yet they're powering their houses using solar. How is that possible? Travoli, 2 names, August Aaron, Saul Aaron. I like. M. Cohen, 1283. Hey, Sam, did you check out the video of Obama getting lectured by some Dr. Falwell-type cranks about the family members at the National Prayer Breakfast? The idea that he gives these people legitimacy by showing up there is pretty problematic. I don't see the political downside of telling them to F off in this point. Keep up the good work. I've heard about it. I have not seen that yet. C. McDonald, Jim sounds out of breath because he has to run all the way upstairs from the basement to use the phone, and his mom said lunch was ready. Dave with dignity. Stop hating. Drones are people too. Tapes. Here are some baby names which would make Jim very happy. Gary Johnson Cedar. Mia Culpa Cedar. War Crime Cedar. Ashmedo My Dad Cedar. Woohoo. Rypop Phil. It's bothersome when someone targeted by the drone program that could not be sentenced to death in federal court. John Philip Walker Lynn kind of screws up the general's theory. Still alive in federal prison. Indeed. Morella, 622. Sam, when they talk about the government power to kill its citizens, why nobody ever points out the government already obviously has that power because of the death penalty? Capital punishment is always off the radar screen, but in my opinion, it's fundamental in changing people's attitudes about this issue of government power to kill. Well, yes, I agree. It also, at least, arguably, there's due process or judicial review. Better to say it. Judicial review. Day Fru. Terry Gibson introduced legislation in the New York Senate to prevent using frack fluid as road dicer. It's not fiction. Everybody needs to call Cuomo, tell him to ban fracking now before February 13th. Indeed. Cool J, speaking of extrajudicial execution, did you see how the LAPD opened on fire? Yes. Unbelievable, that story. The LAPD, which are on a manhunt for a former cop who has killed at least 3 people now. Is that right? And has issued some pretty crazy manifesto suggesting that he is not, well, I think obviously almost by definition a guy like this is crazy, but saying that he's coming after some of these cops. He is or was apparently driving a blue SUV. The cops shot up a blue SUV with literally tens, not dozens of bullet firing, hitting a 70-year-old woman and her 40-some-odd-year-old daughter when they were on a paper route. Their suspect is a over 200-pound, 6-foot-tall black man.
Closer to 300 pounds.
300-pound a black man. And the cops opened fire on this SUV. I mean, this is inexplicable unless you assume these cops are slightly trigger-happy. It's unbelievable. The pictures of this van, this SUV, are extraordinary. And the cop said, yes, this is tragic. I'll say. Unbelievable. I love Sam Cedar. My son's name is Jason. Name your son Jason. Jay Tingle. That eulogy email from George W. Bush makes an interesting point. If Bubba speaks at George H.W. Bush's funeral, he'll steal any and all of W's thunder. It'll be amusing to see how W eulogizes his dad, try and keep him from being overshadowed by Clinton. He will be especially funny if Hillary is president at the time, and she will definitely get a plum speaking position. Half tone deaf, Jose Padilla was a U.S. citizen, and it didn't stop John Ashcroft from illegally detaining, torturing, and destroying his mind. Indeed. And the final I am of the day.
Some weird static going on.
1004 wastewater. The DEP issued permits without public comment, but suspended the permit after public outcry. And I was being sarcastic, calling Jim nice, only you know, but you know how that comes through online. The Daily Kos article on the fracking fluid has legit links. Check it out if you have time. Pennsylvania gas production is so large, they're looking for alternate methods of wastewater disposal or treatment. If you can call letting it into the water table disposal. All right, folks. Hopefully, see you live on Monday. If not, it'll be a pre-tape. We'll talk to you then.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive